The screen doesn't blink. It just sits there. 1:12 a.m. A soft gray glow from a 2024 Dell monitor cuts through the dark of a high-rise office. On the bottom right, a notification sits. Chase private client. Wire transfer cleared. $850 million. Brutal. Exactly. Final. The city outside doesn't reorganize itself around that number. The yellow cabs on the street below still honk. The rain still hits the glass. It is completely, absolutely ordinary outside. Inside, there is no champagne, no music, no shouting, just the low hum of the AC. You don't look at the screen. You look at a sticky smudge on the edge of your glass desk, left behind by a half-empty bottle of generic sparkling water. You take a wet napkin. You press down with your thumb. You wipe it. Once. Twice. The glass resists, then clears. Next to the monitor sits a plastic relic, an old Casio calculator. The LCD screen is half-faded. The mechanics inside are tired. The equals button is missing, a hollow gray square. You run your finger over the plastic, wiping away a thin layer of dust. Your company is gone. The B2B software is no longer yours. You have more money than 3 generations of your family could ever dream of spending, and more than the daughter sleeping in her bed at home will ever have to count. But your hands still feel cold. The room still feels quiet. The numbers changed, but the air inside your chest didn't. That is the secret. The arrival feels completely, exactly like absolute nothing. 12 years ago, Detroit, Michigan. A cramped 2-bedroom apartment on Linwood Avenue where the winter didn't stop at the window pane. The air inside always smelled of cheap kerosene heat and damp drywall, a heavy, sulfurous chemical sting that stuck to the back of your throat. That was the year the automotive stamping plant on Elm Street cut its 3rd shift. Your father came home at 2:43 p.m. on a Thursday, his steel-toed boots unlaced, and he didn't take off his grease-stained cap. He just sat at the Formica kitchen table and stared at his thumbs. He didn't say the word laid off. He didn't have to. The heavy silence in the cold room did the talking. Then came the daily math. It always came down to math. Your mother would pull the old gray Casio calculator from the drawer next to the stove, the one with the missing equals button, just a raw, exposed rubber nub inside a hollow square. She would press the numbers with the tip of a cheap blue ballpoint pen. 750 plus 120 plus 85. But she never pressed the equal sign. She didn't want to see the finality of what they owed. She just kept adding, hoping the sequence wouldn't catch up to them. Today, economic reports show that the bottom 60% of families operate on less than 3 weeks of financial runway. Back then, your family didn't have weeks. They had hours. You were 10 years old, standing by the linoleum counter, watching her shoulders. You learned to measure the family's survival by the depth of her breath. Then, the sound. The sharp metal clink of the front door mail slot. A white envelope sliding across the floor. A 3-day pay or quit notice. You watched your mother's chest tighten, her breathing turning shallow, rapid, like she was running out of air in her own kitchen. That was your education. Nobody taught you about compound interest or assets. You learned that money was a shield, a fragile, rusted piece of metal you held up to keep the world from violently smashing through your front door. You swore right then, watching her shoulders drop, that if you ever built a life of your own, your future family would never have to learn the language of survival arithmetic. You are 21. It is a freezing Thursday morning in January, and the window glass is covered in a thin lattice of ice. Your fingers are too stiff to hit the keys cleanly. You open the banking app on your phone. You already know the number, but looking at it makes it real. Available balance, $11.45. The day before, there was $2,111.45. You spent exactly $2,100 on a bulk logistics software license, convinced you had found the loophole. A digital arbitrage play that couldn't fail. It failed in 48 hours. No clients, no traffic. The marketplace dashboard just stared back at you with a row of dead zeros, a ghost town. Built with every single dollar you saved scraping grease off diner plates, walking instead of taking the subway, and skipping lunches. Your chest drops. It is a very quiet, very specific wait. It isn't panic. Panic has frantic energy. This is just a hollow gray emptiness. The world doesn't stop to pity a 21-year-old who made a bad bet. Nobody calls to check in. The city outside just keeps moving. Recent failure metrics reveal that roughly 90% of solo digital ventures and tech startups quietly vanish within their first year. You aren't an outlier anymore. You are just another silent statistic bleeding out in the dark. You sit on the edge of your bed. A $90 used mattress bought off Facebook Marketplace, stained on the corner, sitting directly on the freezing hardwood floor because a frame was next winter's problem. 4 feet away, your roommate is snoring under a heavy blanket, completely unaware that your world just collapsed. This is the part they never put in the motivational videos, the staying. Not the dramatic comeback, but the silent choice to not close the laptop. You stretch your stiff, cold fingers. You open a brand new blank text editor. You don't quit. You don't cry. You just sit back down on the floor and start writing code again. Not looking for a loophole this time. Not chasing a shortcut. Just building a crude, basic website for a local dry cleaner who promised you $300 if it shows up on Google. The slow, unglamorous climb was finally beginning. By 24, the $300 websites are behind you. You are running a small digital agency from a wooden desk wedged between the kitchen counter and the window. 12 clients, $6,800 a month. You do the math on a Tuesday afternoon, realizing you are clearing more than the median household income alone, while your apartment radiator still knocks every night at 2 a.m. Nobody congratulates you. There is no ceremony. You just send the invoices and open the next problem. Then, the agency mutates. It becomes a SaaS monster. The code works while you sleep, scaling silently from thousands to millions of global users. But every new server tier builds the wall higher. Then comes the tax, the bitter social tax. It happens at 4:12 p.m. on a Tuesday. Your phone buzzes. Dylan. The kid who shared his half-eaten turkey sandwiches on the steps of Linwood Elementary. You answer quickly, expecting a joke about the struggling Pistons. Instead, there is a sharp tremor in his voice, a long, uneven exhale. His aging mother needs gallbladder surgery. The insurance deductible is a wall. He needs $4,500. He genuinely hates himself for asking. I'll wire it right now, you say. You don't even check your balance. To you, it is a rounding error. To him, it is the sky falling. And in that exact second, the friendship dies. A heavy, transactional silence drops into the phone line. He thanks you 3 times, his voice thick with a new, forced humility. The organic equality is gone. You are no longer his brother. You are his wealthy benefactor. The gravity shifted. 2 weeks later, Sunday dinner at your aunt's house. The small dining room smells of sweet cardamom, burnt ghee, and old financial anxieties. Your Uncle John looks up from his plate, scooping rice with his thumb. He makes a sharp, cynical joke about tech billionaires buying yachts while the local neighborhood is completely crumbling. The table laughs out loud. You catch your breath. You join in, but your laugh is a half-beat late, a hollow mechanical sound. Everyone at the table shifts their eyes to you, just for a split second, checking your quiet reaction. That is the isolation. Money has permanently rearranged the gravity of every room you enter. You didn't just leave Detroit, you left the human frequency. People don't talk, they negotiate, they carefully check their words, they adjust their posture. You built the shield to protect your family from the cold, but shields are made of thick iron, and heavy iron never lets human warmth pass through. Carol from Forbes hung up. The number is locked. 8,500 trade data points verified. Exactly $850 million. You put the phone down on the kitchen counter. You walk into the dining room. Your 13-year-old daughter, Maya, is sitting at the table, staring at her math notebook. She groans, tapping her pencil against the wood. Negative exponents make 0 sense, she mutters, genuinely irritated. Why does the number have to flip upside down just because of a minus sign? You look at her face. It is smooth, unlined, completely untouched by the toxic math of survival. She has never memorized the rhythm of her grandmother's shallow breathing. She has never looked at a white envelope on the linoleum floor like it was a live grenade. She doesn't know what a pay or quit notice looks like. Recent wealth demographic reports show that first-generation wealth builders now make up nearly 80% of the ultra-high net worth population. We are an army of anomalies. People who built empires out of absolute thin air but still feel uncomfortable in a well-lit room. You don't correct her. You don't tell her about the old Casio calculator or the Detroit winter. You just sit down next to her, take the pencil, and gently guide her through the steps. You let her complain about the schoolwork, because that is the ultimate victory. The invisible ceiling didn't shatter with a loud, dramatic explosion. It dissolved into pure mist, so quietly that the girl at the table looks up at the endless, open sky and simply thinks it was always just the norm.